Welcome to Trinity Radio. I'm Braxton Hunter, and along with me today is...
a very short Jonathan Pritchett, apparently.
You do look a little short. Let's see if we can fix that up. And while we do, why don't you open the show for everyone?
Yeah, how are you doing?
Pretty good.
Yeah, we did not adjust the cameras, but...
A little bit down today.
No.
One of those
It's
things...
Friday.
You can't always put your finger on why, but that's all right, because I'm generally an optimistic, happy guy. And we're not going to let that get us down.
No, we're not. So as far as can atheists fulfill, that's kind of the question that we're asking. Got a couple articles to look at. But first, I want to talk about something that comes out of Galatians 5 about the offense of the cross. Now, of course, in context, you go back to Galatians 3, what do they talk about? Faith. They're talking about works. They're talking about, curses everyone who doesn't do everything that's written in this book, which is a quote from Deuteronomy. And then a few verses later, there's another quote from Deuteronomy that curses anyone who hangs on a tree. So it's kind of offensive to Jews, right? That this guy that did hang on a tree is your way of justification, not following works of the law, circumcision, all that, right? But the other point being, this law is not sufficient to bring righteousness, so all of your efforts to fulfill that law are going to be in vain, right? So it's kind of the offense of the cross is kind of twofold. One, for a Jewish audience, you're asking us to put down this thing that's been with us since Sinai for someone that's hung on a cross. Okay, there's that. And then the double offense of, with that, all of our effort to keep this Torah is going to be useless for justification for Yahweh. So but we've kind of taken that phrase, the offense of the cross, and in our culture where everyone seems to be oversensitive, there's this notion that Christians will sometimes kind of the piety police will come around, and they'll say to Christians, now look, the gospel on its own is offensive. So no need to compound the offense, right? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So the question I'm asking is, why do people say that, and what is it about the gospel itself that is offensive rather than why you would, the person presenting it, be the offensive person because they tell you don't be offensive?
Well, I could turn on my webcam, as I have recently, and read 1 Corinthians 6, 9 through 11, about those people that are not going to inherit the kingdom, and other passages like that.
Yeah, the will not inherit vice lists, as they're called.
And you know what?
And there's one in Ephesians.
When you do that, that offends people, because what's offensive is the call to live like Jesus and put down your sin, especially if your sins you have taken on as a part of your identity.
See, that's what I think it is as well. But in that is more of getting into the debate between the soterion gospel and the King Jesus gospel, because the soterion gospel is the let's take 1 Corinthians 15, 3 through 7. Mm-hmm. Let's take out the phrases in accordance with the scriptures so that it's just Jesus died on the cross and rose from the grave, and then that way we don't have to smuggle in all the
So like if you went with the focused in gospel message, because of course gospel is a more general term than people think it is, because there are multiple things.
Right.
And from the beginning of Mark we were talking.
Yeah.
So like you're saying though, like if we take what most people think of as the root gospel message, that Jesus was dead, buried, rose again, and appeared to all these people.
Yes.
You're saying, why would that be offensive?
Right. Unless you add back in accordance with the scriptures, which is the whole story of redemption and human failure and folly and all of that other stuff. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, technically, you could preach the gospel without mentioning hell. We know that the people in the book of, we know that non-believers and some Christians find hell offensive, mm-hmm. right? Especially the progressive types or whatever. But you can preach the gospel without mentioning the word hell, because every single person other than Jesus who preached the gospel to lost people, like in the book of Acts, for example, never mentioned hell. The closest you get, like James saying, tongues set on the fires of hell, but that's not talking about, it's the fires of Gehenna. That's not really talking mm-hmm. about if you don't believe the gospel, you'll go to hell. That's not what he's saying. So we know that you can do that. So the closest you get is judgment and shame, like if you think about Acts chapter 17. So what I think is offensive is when you're presenting the gospel that you're a sinner, right? Whether you mention hell or not, you can present judgment, because I think that's what you find in Acts, you know. And Jesus lets us know, and John tells us what that judgment's going to be like, you know. However you shake that out, right, among the views, but I think ultimately what's offensive is what you said. It's the repentance part that says, no matter what someone could concede, yeah, it's nice that Jesus thought he was doing something on behalf of humanity, but the idea that I have to change all of these things about myself, I think that is the real offense.
That's offensive. Well, but also I can see the gospel being offensive outside of anywhere in the Gentile context, because it stands, the resurrection message itself, especially if we get any more detail around that, right, is at odds with other world religions. So any religion that you encountered, especially if you underscored the exclusivity of Christianity, you tick off all those people from other religions.
Right, because the second you say, I think
Real quick, while you're formulating that point, Jim Amberg says, if you're feeling down, move that statue out of the way and rock some Xbox on that big old TV behind Dr. P for the rest of the day. Some days you just need to blow off a little steam.
Yes, and as president, you can do that. As vice president of academic affairs, if I wanted to do that, I would have to take up space in your office.
You have to get a 100 on your spelling test, and then you'll get special privileges.
Yeah. But anyway, what I was saying is, the "you're a sinner" part, when you define what that is, and that will take you to the big "will not inherit" lists, and then there's plenty of others, right? That you can go back to the laws, the tutor, and nobody's there. I think that that is offensive to people, because there's no way to not be needlessly offensive, as I think is the point. Because the whole point of the cross is that Jesus died for all of those horrible things that you do, that also Jesus demands you stop doing, right? And so once you get into what those things are, I don't think that there's any way to not be offensive. And in fact,
Bible describes. Here's the thing. The Bible, which I know we're talking about the gospel, and now even focused in on the gospel, but the Bible describes itself, or the message of it, as an offensive weapon. And if you go around waving an offensive weapon around in society, you might upset some people. The most important thing is that you don't be like some TV preachers who you can find anywhere you are in the Western world, who look like they got up in the morning deciding, who can I tick off with the gospel, when that shouldn't necessarily be your stated goal. Your goal should be to present the gospel, and if it offends people, that's going to happen. Right.
But I think that because of what Christians become when they believe it, traditional Christians, I think that that's actually probably more offensive, because everything that Christ, who affirmed both testaments, right? Affirm the Old Testament. Anytime you run up against that standard, I think in every culture, there's no different. And like for Greeks in the first century than our culture, they did a bunch of weird stuff too. So
indeed,
yeah. So I think there's no way for you to not be needlessly offensive. So I think that whole line doesn't make any sense, because anytime you confront sinners and delineate what these sins are and what you need to turn from, what Christ died for, there's no way that you can avoid, unless you water down the seriousness of sin in any age, right? But I do think that we see this pushback of, well, I'm going to assume that some deity dying for sinful humanity as offensive, when you give no explanation for why it's offensive. And then you present a gospel of, well, you're in a bad shape. Not going to explain how, but you're bad off, you're a sinner, you're separated from God, but Jesus did this thing on the cross. I don't think anyone's going to find that offensive, unless you explain why.
I got a stack full of TikTokers who find it offensive.
Well, some people find it offensive that somebody could pay for the punishment of another.
Yeah, Christopher Hitchens thought that.
Right.
thought that was immoral in and of itself.
Yeah.
Right. Listen, let's get to a couple of these. Uber Scheiser says offensive? No. Farcical? Yes. Uber Scheiser, atheist extraordinaire, as far as I can tell, doesn't think the gospel is offensive. That's my takeaway there. Is that your takeaway?
Yeah.
He doesn't think the gospel is offensive. But down here, we had one other thing I wanted to get to. Honestly, Atheist says, what game are you going to play to blow off steam? PubG. PubG?
I thought you can't play that anymore because of the shutting down the Google thing.
I can't play it on Stadia. I can still play it on Xbox.
Do you have an Xbox here?
No. But I won't play anything here. But
you did play PubG here. I'm going to out you. I'm looking at your old
there
Google
was a time I played it once here. All right.
Yeah.
Back to it. Oh, yeah. Okay. What is the definition of sin? Why should atheists be concerned about sin? Because there is a penalty for sin, whether you choose to believe in sin or not, or in God or not. The penalty is still there. It's like if you decide you don't care what the speed limit is, guess what? There's still a speed limit, and you still might get pulled over, and there's still a penalty to pay. So if you don't believe, then I guess you shouldn't care about what the Christian message regarding sin is. On the other hand, if you're an atheist and you say, well, I don't believe in sin, as if that, when we're talking about morality or something, everyone is a sinner, at least in the sense that you as an atheist or an agnostic or whatever have done things that you think are wrong by your own standards. So if we hold you to your own standards, you've done things wrong. Are you really going to tell me you've never sat back and thought, I was really a jerk to that guy today? I wish I hadn't said it that way. Or something equivalent? Of course you have. You're a human being, and you're not a perfect human being. And none of us are. And so as a result of that, you still sin, even if you call it something else. In addition to that, whether or not you believe that God exists and that Christianity is true, if it is, you're still facing penalties, whether you think so or not.
Yeah, amen. I mean, sin... you can harmatia. You could say missing the mark. Bible says, sin is breaking the law. Mm-hmm. You also have the idea of sin as a personified cosmic power that's a slave master, that's a ruler. Sin reigns and death, for example, where death reigns. So these are cosmic ruling powers, right? So you can speak of it metaphor like that. But essentially, like as far as sinning, falling short, missing the target, anything that falls short of what God's standard is for humanity, that He gets to set as creator, and says, and I mean, that's the basic definition. And a lot of what you find outlined as sin has some overlap with what you just find in law codes throughout all of history. Some of it you don't, right? So it's in the United States now, technically, it's not like you go to jail for committing adultery. So that's not like a legal issue. They could put you in prison now. But it is still a sin. So it's not just like if you have national laws and you break those are bad. God's standard goes beyond just that. So
Nikki says, TGIF, y'all.
Yeah.
And he says, I was a Jewish atheist for 54 years. As an atheist, I was super offended with any religious belief. And then I thought they added something else, but that's enough to make the point. So, yeah, they thought it was just stuff to make people feel bad.
So to close out this section, I'm just going to say, look, there's no way to not be offensive. So when someone tells you the gospel is offensive enough, it's not going to be offensive to modern people for the same reasons Paul was saying in Galatians why it'd be offensive to Jews. And it's not going to be folly to non-believers in exactly the same way that it was folly to Greeks, because a lot of our culture doesn't believe in the idea of their pantheon versus Yahweh and Jesus, dying on a cross, basically losing. Why are we going? That's one of the. You put Jesus in the L category for the Greeks as opposed to some of the gods that they have that they would put in the W category. So it's like that's kind of foolishness to them, but it's still going to be foolishness for other grounds, right? And it's still. And I think the only way that you can find is to be quote unquote needlessly offensive and tell people why the gospel was necessary in the first place. And so there's no way to avoid it. Anyway, as far as...
Real quick, Grays 174 says, hey, is there an academic defense of the killing your cat explanation of hell? If you don't know what that is, I'll just say go check out, it was on one of the videos, I think it was last week's video. They think it's really bad, but we'll try to give it a fair shake. Someone wrote a legit paper. I don't know where a paper exists about that. It has come up quite a bit. In fact, when I was at Rethinking Hell in Seattle a couple of years ago, in a panel discussion, Chris Date even mentioned that he used to use this but doesn't anymore. Because yes, as a conditional immortality advocate, he still believes that you will be dead everlastingly, and so it still works. But here is where I think people trip up with this. All right, you take a stair step of judgment, and what this is supposed to do is show you with your intuitions that it should say something about what your judgment should be for sinning against God. So you say, okay, what's the penalty for sinning against a cat, so to speak, by killing it? Okay, then compare that to the penalty for sinning against a man by killing him, right?
Right.
That makes a stair step. You see there that whatever the sin would have been, like we're using murder because it's the most obvious, or killing. Mm-hmm. But the point is to sin. Like whatever the sin would have been, it's just that we recognize that one. So you sin against a cat, you sin against a man, and what this is supposed to do is people will say,
it up.
You don't kill God. I kill a cat, I kill a man, I don't kill God. So that doesn't even make any sense. Yeah. Well, the reason killing is used is just because it gets your intuition pump up there so you can see what we're saying with cats and humans. But what you still got, what you should have gotten is there is a sin, there is a penalty for a sin against a cat. Yeah. Not very big by comparison. A much bigger penalty for sinning against a man, and a much greater penalty for sinning against God. Now you might say, but I didn't do anything near to God like what you're describing of the cat and the human. Fair enough. But you sinned against God on Christian theology, and sinning against an everlasting holy God is that serious, even when compared with the death of a man or a death of a cat.
Amen.
I think it still works.
I actually do too. It scales up. It's reasonable, but I'm glad somebody out there to fill a quarterly wrote a paper in defense so that somebody could have content. Make no mistake, academic journals require the content, feed the beast just as much as like YouTube content creators.
I would like to know, seriously, I would like to know what theological items that are absolute garbage, right? I would want to know that to begin with. Mm-hmm. What things that people have said about the Bible or about Moses or about whatever are absolute garbage, and and then which one of those would not exist, would not be in our academics today if it weren't for somebody just wanting to get a dissertation through or an article written. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
Uber Snizer says, by the way, I cannot stick around today, but your custom engraved tumblers are on the way. Awesome.
Yeah, and Paulogia says, if sin is falling short of God's standards, then definitionally, if God doesn't exist, then neither does sin as an actual infraction. I agree completely, Paulogia. We agree. Shake hands.
Right.
But of course, that brings us always back around to the real question: does God exist? Is Christianity true?
Right.
And if so, what is He like?
Right.
Thanks for showing up, Paul. All right, Jonathan. On to your next.
Yes.
Piece that you wanted to talk
Don't
about.
be needlessly offensive is a. I don't know. I don't even know what that means anymore. But in a culture that's needlessly offended by everything, it's impossible to avoid, so don't worry about it. Atheism, we came across an article that I thought was interesting. It's 5 reasons why atheists make better husbands.
Oh, the last one in the list?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that this was kind of interesting.
All right.
Because remember, I found the title is 5 reasons atheists make better husbands, as written by one. What's the name of the author?
Bob
Alaberta. Yeah. 5 atheists are better husbands. Okay. So he gives a story about he once dated a woman who rediscovered Jesus halfway through the relationship. Not certain where he was hiding all this time, but she sure did find him. And yes, it felt a little awkward for my girlfriend to be with another man. Haha. Even if that other man didn't actually exist. I tried to be... okay, so we have a Jesus mythicist here. Okay. Anyway, things... but eventually there were things that I could... things that Jesus could give her that I just couldn't. Eternal salvation was a pretty big deal, I guess. In the end, her religion turned into the primary destructive force in our relationship, and not the discord in our beliefs. We were pretty much tolerant of each other in that respect, but the actual values and rules her religion forced her to follow. Learn from my mistakes. Here is why relationships are much better with a non-religious person. Okay, so here are 5 reasons atheists make better husbands. So he's kind of jumping from relationships to husbands and back again to relationships, kind of all over the place. He says, we believe that a healthy sex life is totally rad, not some sinful catch-22. With a religious person, sex is a damned if you do, damned if you don't proposition. Technically, only they're damned if they do. But your relationship is damned if you don't. With the 3 major religions, premarital sex engenders shame, guilt, and self-loathing. In the pious party, you either have no sex life or at all, or are someone who hates yourself a little more every time you do it. It's a recipe for resentment for both parties. Erasing God from the equation helps you both have a healthy, positive attitude about sex. You can still scream his name in bed if you want. Okay, so so you're okay with premarital sex as an atheist. How does it follow from that makes you a better husband? Because the whole point of premarital sex is sex before you're a husband.
Yeah, if we're talking about within marriage,
yeah,
who's better? Yeah. Is that what it is? Who's better?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
who's a better husband?
Better husbands. Yeah, and the reason is because they're allowed to have a lot of premarital sex. I guess that's number one.
Yeah, because
they like sex.
Yeah,
and not just that they like sex, because
you don't feel guilty before you're ever a husband or a wife having sex.
What's the catch-22? We believe that having a healthy sex life is totally rad. Okay, I'm on board.
Acting like it's your relationship. If you're in a relationship with someone who's a believer and you're not a believer or whatever, it's better for you to become a non-believer because you won't have to be in this catch-22 that if you don't have sex, your relationship's going to end. But if you do have sex, you're going to have guilt and shame and whatever if you're the believer.
What? In the marriage?
That's my point. This whole thing is the first reason why atheists make better husbands has nothing whatsoever to do with the marriage.
Directly, anyway.
Yeah.
Someone could argue. Now, let me be the atheist here.
Okay.
Someone could argue and say, well, look, actually, yes, because this premarital sex and purity culture type messaging has led to a situation where now people want to get married way too fast because that's the only way they get to have sex, permissible to their religion. And so they end up marrying for the wrong reasons because it's more about my immediate lusts and sex than anything else. And as a result, it's going to be harder to be a good husband or a good wife because the whole thing initially was about sex.
Yeah, wouldn't it have been better had that atheist wrote the argument?
Do what? If I was the atheist that wrote the argument?
Right. Exactly.
You think that makes a better point?
Right, because I don't quite see the thing here. Now I know it's rare these days for even Christians to get married as a virgin to a virgin. That's not my situation. That's not a lot of people's situation. But it is, in fact, your situation.
Yeah.
With you and your wife, both married virgin. How disappointing is your sex life, Braxton?
Well, I don't want to speak for my wife, but things are pretty good.
Right. And I imagine she would say the same thing.
Okay, here's a question. Yeah. How upset would you be if Calvinism was true?
A little. Not a lot, but a little.
Upset. See, this is weird for me because I'm one of those people that rarely, if ever, has even gotten, and not that I think I'm better than anyone, mad at God, right? Like, I never really saw the point.
People got mad at God in the Bible all the time.
I know, it's biblical. I mean, it happens biblically speaking, but I've just never been that guy.
Yeah.
Okay, because I'm like, I know the score. Like, I know what's up here. I know. Yeah. Okay, I get that. So that didn't ever really do anything. But so in a similar way, why am I mad at God that determinism is true? I mean, do I even
because
know?
you can't not be if determinism is true.
Right. I mean, if
you got upset, mad about it.
Well, it's kind of like
what can you do about it?
Anytime I see someone do this, and I saw someone that I respect, I think, do this not too long ago, say something like, well, if Calvinism was true, I don't think I could worship that God, or I'd be angry at that God or something.
Yeah,
I thought to myself, I used to say that. I used to say that when I was a teenager, and even as a younger guy in his 20s. I used to say that, but then I realized, like, wait a minute, if he's God, he's God. And then I thought, plus, if I did or didn't like hate God or not worship him, whatever happens is just determined anyway on Calvinism for his glory, for his good. I mean, whatever it turns out to be, that's the picture he painted, right?
Yeah.
So,
including you being upset about it.
I'd be confused. I'd be very confused.
Well, that's two. I mean, what could you do about it?
Well,
right?
I wanted to highlight a story of the channel Angel here, who is Jim Amberg, and I don't know where he said it, but he talked about when he was a Calvin, or when he's an atheist. I don't know if he was ever a Calvinist. Where did it go? But anyway, he said about the subject you just raised, the romantic side of things.
Yeah.
Well, he said that it's been better since being a Christian.
Well, there's a lot of people that have done some research that have found that like happily married, faithful Christian couples have
better sex.
Well, religious couples in general, and then Christian couples in a couple studies in particular. Though some people have taken issue with those studies, but that's because they don't like the conclusions, I guess. But yeah, I mean, that doesn't mean that if you are a Christian happily, or if you're a Christian and you get married, that you're going to have a wonderful sex life. But just on average, they seem to report higher satisfaction. Religious people in general and Christians in particular. So there's a.
If Calvinism turns out to be true, I would be very sad and disappointing. But you wouldn't be disappointing; you'd be disappointed. But I'd have to live with it. That's
disappointing works too, because I mean, you would be disappointed.
I mean, if you're disappointed, that's what.
I mean, embrace worm theology. You're always disappointing, right? You are just walking around disappointed.
Okay, now Kevin. Now I don't want to upset any particular groups of Christians, but I will say this: our comments are not necessarily tailored around the Catholic Church, so there could be things there that we.
I could, in the sense that they don't believe in birth control, and if you have a whole bunch of kids, that can put a hindrance in your.
If it works, if the Catholic,
but you still have time to have sex to have enough kids.
Every time we talk about sex, nobody listens to that episode. Let's get away from sex. Right. I guess people just don't want to hear us talk about that. Okay, what's your next thing, Pritchett?
Well, we got more points. 5 reasons why.
Oh, that was just one of the points.
Yeah, that was just one of the points.
So this first point has nothing to do directly anyway.
Yeah.
You come first in our life.
Yeah.
If you date a devout follower of a religion, you'll never be the most important thing in their life. It came down to you or their God. Guess what? Guess who has power over their eternal soul? Not you. Not even the Ghostbusters. With an atheist or agnostic, you'll never have to compete and lose. Okay, fine.
How does that make you a better husband?
I think that, all right, here we go. You want to hear something really cheesy? You want to hear something that's really cheesy? I grew up in cheesy church culture, and guess what?
What?
Some of the little bumper sticker type things are true, okay? And the thing that everybody does in premarital counseling, where you have, this will just tick off the evangelical raised atheist here, but where you have like the triangle, you have a triangle, and on either side of the triangle is you and your spouse, and as you get closer to God, who's at the top of the triangle, you're closer to each other. Dadgummit, that's right.
That is right.
Sorry if I blew your speakers.
I agree. Look, I know a lot of people who would
spit it out, Pritchett. Bare your soul.
Okay, here's the thing. I like the way a guy, I can't remember his name, he was a Calvinist guy who had a blog who said he liked hanging out with non-Calvinists more than Calvinists. Tribal or whatever, what's that?
I have to admit,
Tribal blog, or I can't remember the name of it. It was an interesting blog. Anyway, I like something he said, because he's like, I have a lot of firsts. He says, I put God first so that I can put my wife first. I put my wife first so I can put my kids first. I put my kids first so I can put my job first. I put my jobs first so I can put my friends first. I put my friends first so I can, put my community first. So it's like you could have the umbrella or the triangle, right? And the closer you get to God, the closer you get to each other. And I do affirm that. But it's like I put God first so that I like the way he said it, so I could put all these other things first, right?
It's similar to what annoys me when people say, and this will annoy some people that I'm saying this annoys me. But when people say, well, now, your God comes first. You're like, if you're in ministry, if you're a pastor or something, this is what they all say, is God comes first. Your family comes second, and then your ministry comes third. And I'm like, hold on. God comes first, as well as my ministry in God's name. It's just that the first group to whom I'm ministering is my family.
Yeah.
Right. And then it's not like third comes my ministry. All of it is ministry, and my family comes first in that order.
Yeah. Putting God first in your marriage. Okay. Let's for all of you sex obsessed people, you were reading 1 Corinthians. It's like, okay, so you're married, like your body is not yours. It belongs to your spouse. Your spouse's body is not hers. It belongs to you. Right. So have sex whenever you want to with each other, except for when the other one wants to go pray every now and then. Or need some quiet time.
Well, in fact, except for a time of fasting or something.
And prayer and whatever. So it's kind of like, and it's kind of like, hey, that's seems like it not a bad idea to put God first and then take a break from all the sex that you should be having as Christians to go.
Obviously, this does not speak of abusive relationships.
Right.
And things
just normal, healthy marriages.
Yeah, right.
Right. I mean, it's like people think the idea of putting God first means that takes away from all the other things. But back to the Christians have happier sex lives information is just like if sex is the most important thing for you in a marriage, which I don't think that it is, but it's important. I'm not going to say it's not.
Yeah.
When you get old, if you're in your 90s, it becomes less. But I'm just saying, it's like this idea that this guy seems obsessed with sex, so we'll just talk about that too. It's just, there's this idea that putting God first means you can't put your spouse first. Mm-hmm. And I say, no, I put God first so I can put my spouse first.
And Tim the Ancient makes a good point. Because what goes in place of God, in this domain, atheists don't even believe this point. He says, you would leave someone who turned out to be a serial killer, right? Then I guess ethics comes first before your spouse. I guess I'm second best. So the idea is, you get rid of God, there's still some worldview or life goal or purpose or way of thinking about ethics and morality that would supersede certain things. And so if we're just ordering out things, well, you still got something up there above your spouse. It's just not God. It's something else.
That's true.
Yeah.
Very good point. I love Tim the Ancient. I love his Twitter feed.
Tim the Ancient had one of his statements
and I'm finally his Facebook friend, too. I rarely ever send out Facebook requests because I just don't do that because I don't want to, say, I'm inviting you to my obnoxious Facebook wall because it is obnoxious. It's just dad jokes all the way down. But I did want to be Tim the Ancient's friend because I admire his Twitter feed that much.
Well, I read a big quote from him about us at the end of the video I posted today from Trinity Radio.
Yeah, my two favorite people on Twitter is Derek Beeler and Tim the Ancient. Not you, not even Eric Hernandez, who is the greatest living apologist on the planet. Happy birthday yesterday, Eric Hernandez, by the way. I'm sorry that as you get older, you're not going to get any taller, but happy birthday anyway. Your growth spurts are over, my friend, but happy birthday.
So what else you got for us, Pritchett?
Whatever number 3 is, going through the thing.
Keep going?
Yeah.
All right, here we go. We make the most of our life because that's all we atheists make the most of our life because that's all we've got. You want me to read the rest?
I love the way you read.
Religion is like an audition, except you spend your whole life trying to get the part, and you're not sure the part even exists. And maybe this guy isn't even a casting director, and he's just trying to take advantage of your naivety to get in your pants or something like that. Religion requires a lifetime of appeasement and concession. Sex isn't the only sin. Do you want to spend your time with someone on their best behavior, preparing for another life? Or would you rather be with someone living this one to the fullest?
This is a fundamental misunderstanding of Christianity. Christianity is not about preparing for the life to come. It's about bringing that kingdom that was broken into the world through Christ and living that kingdom out here in the now. And, oh, by the way, those people also inherit the world to come, right? And go to heaven in the intermediate state when they die. Again, I don't understand how it's an audition for something. It's for Christianity, you're not auditioning, trying to appease and concede. By the way, again, if you're talking about husbands being a better husband, sex is not a sin for husbands and spouses and their wife together.
Have all you want.
Have all you want. Now, if you're a husband and you have sex with someone who's not your wife, that is a sin.
Yeah.
Right? But
And
it is not a sin. Sex
you?
is not a sin for husbands and wives to have sex with one another.
And it doesn't even seem like odd. Like if I didn't, I mean, it's hard to imagine what it'd be like if you didn't have certain upbringing in a certain culture and with certain ideas and things like that. But it just, I mean, doesn't it seem right? Like, doesn't it seem right anyway? Like that there's going to be less jealousy, less strife, less backbiting, less disease, less all kinds of things. If you find one person and you commit to each other.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah.
And guess what? Dare I say this? I'm going to say it because I actually think it's important. I'm not saying it for like entertainment value. But as a person who has been married to the same woman since I was 20 years old.
Yeah.
I think that there is something, you learn each other. You're listen, young people that aren't married yet, listen to me. You learn when you have one spouse that you're with for a long time. You know what each other, you know each other's deal. You know what I'm saying? I'm trying to say it without saying it, right?
Yes.
You know what each other like, right? And so it's a more advanced experience, I think, than you would have otherwise.
Yeah, and moreover, do you ever feel like...
And you have a lot more sex, by the way.
Yeah, this is a fundamental misunderstanding of the gospel, too. Do you ever feel like you're trying to appease God? Because let's look at Hebrews. Hebrews has something to say about sex, marriage better than defiled. But let's go somewhere else in Hebrews. That we have a high priest in Jesus Christ who ever lives to intercede on our behalf. And the book of Hebrews says, so you can approach boldly to the throne room of God. Are you trying to appease God all the time? Or can you walk into the throne room of grace with boldness?
Right.
This is a total fundamental. You're not preparing for another life. You're doing the work of the King here in this one, which, by the way, when you do ministry with a spouse, whether you and your wife both go to help in the food pantry, or you both go do some community project, or you both go work in the soup kitchen together, whatever you host a small group at whatever you're doing, when you're doing ministry, kingdom work with your spouse, there's an intimacy there that's almost as good as sex.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I mean,
it's different domain, but yeah.
Right.
Hey, real quick.
Oh, wow.
What happened to Jason? You're back, Jason. I hope you're still here to see this. Man, we are so glad to see you back, Jason. You made some amazing things happen last year for us, and not that. Listen, that
doesn't
alone,
mean he was gone the whole time.
That alone was great. No, but I like seeing I like knowing that he's still out there, and thank you so much. I'm with Jim Amberg. That funny symbol before the 100. I'm not sure what that's about.
Euro?
Does it still mean something anymore? No, I'm just kidding. No. We thank God for you, and thank you for that.
Yes, we love Jason Miles, and then also the super chats are really nice, but we really love you beyond that.
Well, when someone gives, it shows me that it's like a vote in favor of what we're trying to accomplish.
It's like, keep going. And so I appreciate that, because it actually helps us to keep going. Not because we don't,
it keeps us motivated.
Not because it only keeps us motivated, but it actually keeps
it pays
literally those things that fall off your wall every week.
Yeah.
I mean, the amount
of interdimensional tiles.
Yeah, the interdimensional tiles that you have enriched Home Depot with that glue gun. That you're a constant use.
Now, Punch Bowl Haircut has a solution. I have the perfect marriage because it's all in my imagination.
I don't even know. I mean,
in the words of St. Bono, old man learned how to cheat ambition. You don't lose if you don't play. All right, let's see what we have down here.
Yeah, Slam RN is making fun of the fact that, unlike Eric Hernandez, I cannot throw a girl in the air and catch her with.
I was wondering what that was about. Have you tried?
I wouldn't even.
I know he's holding his child up.
Right, he was in cheer, and he teaches cheer and all that on the side.
Have you tried to do it?
Have
you tried to do it to Eric Hernandez?
I would not. Could I hold Eric Hernandez? No, that's a skill that I do not have, and I would not want to risk anyone I know into danger of breaking their neck for me trying, or them collapsing on top of me.
Okay, Brian says people should start agnostic to all religious claims when they have sufficient reason to believe or reject they should become theist or atheist. Now, I don't necessarily disagree with that as far as the evidential side of this goes. But here's the thing: most people don't. Most people find themselves in the midst of a group of people from a particular worldview. Not everyone. Is there like an obvious worldview here, like you're born in a Muslim group or a Christian group or whatever? But often there is a dominant group that's there, and so I think if it is not unreasonable to accept what you're being told and seems right in such a setting until you find countervailing evidence.
I want to say, I mean, I'm kind of like, I look at that and it's like, I don't know that you should remain agnostic until you have sufficient reason to believe or reject. I do think that as you go along in whatever you are, if you are an atheist or a theist, continually reevaluate the evidence. But nobody is agnostic or atheist or theist for purely evidential reasons. So there's a lot of emotional reasons involved there. We're complex people. Mm-hmm. And so I don't know that you have to have, what is it, plus 51% certainty, or sureness about something, gut feeling, 51% or higher to commit to something. Mm-hmm. Because on any given day, you may not have that. And some days you may be 90%, and some other days you may be 10%. But you can have a trajectory within a belief system without having to sit on the fence in perpetuity if it's something that matters that much. On things that don't matter, sit on the fence all day long. But I do think that big worldview questions, you don't have to, you're going to have different people set what is sufficient at different levels. So what might be sufficient for one person may not be sufficient for another to commit to either one of those things. Mm-hmm. So, I guess you could say sufficient reason. Yes, that's the only reason why everyone is anything, though, including agnostic, right? You believe that right now you have a sufficient reason to not be either theist or atheist, right? Someone else has already met the threshold. So that's kind of like almost tautological in the sense that you're always at that. Wherever you are, it's because you have sufficient reason to be it. Whatever that threshold is for any particular individual. So I don't know. It's kind of weird. I don't know. Question for Pritchett: on a scale of 1 to 10, how important is it for me to move from having abs to having an actual six-pack? Well, if you have abs, you have. Well, some people have like 2-pack, 4-pack.
Maybe he means the muscles are there, but there's a layer of fat over
visible. How important? It's not important at all.
Important to what?
Your health. Because
abs important to your health.
No.
Yeah.
Well, no, a strong core is important to your health so that you can continue to walk and get up and
a strong enough core.
Yeah.
It doesn't need to look like I'm on WWF or whatever.
Hey, for people over 40, if you have a strong core, you won't need stool softeners. So there's all kinds of reasons why you want a strong core. So I don't think having visible abs is important. Other people might think so, because the key to having visible abs is, depending on your genetics, your fat cell count, and all that other stuff. How low does your body fat percentage have to become in order for them to be visible? And can you maintain a healthy lifestyle? Can your body function properly with that low of, without having to get on performance-enhancing drugs to do it? So I say, sure, have abs. It's not that important. Do it if you can get your body fat percentage low enough. It's going to be different from different people, to which they are visible and you can maintain a healthy, functioning bodily system. Yeah, but is it important? I don't know. Probably not. How many more things do we have on this? We have 2, right?
There's only 2? Okay, let's get back to it. Sorry,
2 more left.
Into the chat there.
2 more left.
All right, number 4. We let science handle birth control. Like atheists, we're happy to let science handle birth control.
Okay, this is obviously a Catholic thing.
This is responding to Catholicism.
Yes.
An atheist will never protest using a condom or on moral grounds or deny you Plan B for faith-based reasons. All the better to reveal in our dirty heathen sex consequence-free. Imagine how different the world would be if that sentence was in the Bible. Now, depending on the Christian you're talking to, even if they're not a Catholic, they could have problems with the Plan B thing. That's a controversial thing, even among non-Catholics. All right, number 5.
I still have. How does that make you a better husband?
Because if a woman marries you and you're an atheist, you're not going to put up any walls to them using contraception.
If you're Catholic.
No, I'm saying if you're an atheist. Wait. Yeah, if you're an atheist, like his kind of atheist.
Yeah.
You're not going to stop anyone from using...
any form of contraception.
Yeah, contraception.
Like including abortion as contraception.
Right. They'll like you better that way. Women will like men like that who don't interfere.
But if you don't have a problem with birth control or you like want to have kids, how does this make you a better husband? How is it better by X factor because all forms of contraception, including murdering babies, is on the table as opposed to a Protestant evangelical who doesn't really object to birth control, or you have a vasectomy or whatever.
Mm-hmm. I don't know.
I don't know how
you gave me this list. Okay. We atheists don't automatically subscribe to the idea that women are inferior to men. Well, Mr. Egalitarian over there,
I don't think that
you're not even one of those Christians who thinks that the roles of men and women ecclesiologically necessarily need to be different, right?
Yeah, but I think that egalitarianism is a theological idea about church offices, really, for me.
Well, people.
I don't believe that complementarians think that women are inferior. That because
I don't.
because a complementarian says, I don't think a woman should be pastor of my church, right? Some complementarians, not Braxton, would even say, or children's minister or anything else, like no office in the church. Like you can't work for a church if you're a woman, right? Even them, giving them as much grace as possible, even Braxton, who doesn't even agree with that kind of, like, don't be a youth pastor and a woman, right? Don't be a children's minister. You can't at all.
I'd let them.
Yeah, I know. But
you're saying even those people.
Even the people that Braxton disagree with, you still would say that those complementarians, they're
more complementarian than me.
Right.
They're more conservative complementarian.
They don't look at women as inferior simply because they say, we don't think that...
Because the whole reason they call themselves complementarian is these are complementary but equal roles.
Right. So John Piper is a lot like some of these conservative spokespeople.
No. Let me say that again because I don't want to say it wrong. Men and women are complementary. They have complementary roles. They're equal in value.
Yes.
Yeah.
And even the people who say, I don't think women should be in combat, and I don't think that women should be in patrol cars or whatever. There are people like that are on the right and that are religious, like John Piper, for example, doesn't think women should be cops, right? Or even John Piper, his reason for that is because he elevates women as being too good for that kind of thing. Don't let them do that kind of thing. They're not built for it, so don't let them do it because we want them to be above that.
Well, there might be something to the "don't let them do it" part.
Right.
Like, are you not? But, what are you doing? How are you?
Okay, so I don't care if women are in the military or police officers, but I'm trying to steelman John Piper.
And you're saying what he's saying, folks, is the most
is you might be too physically inferior to have to carry a 45-pound backpack for days on end while also carrying an assault rifle, right? So John Piper's like, maybe women shouldn't do that, and so because of physical limitations. So he's acknowledging those kind of things. And also because we don't want to put women in harm's way. We're the kind of people that women should go first on the boat off the Titanic kind of people, right?
That's me.
That's most men in general anyway.
Call me Call me misogynistic.
Yeah. You as a man are less important to the continuation of the species than women are because they give birth. So I don't know that there's... By acknowledging that women maybe shouldn't be in combat or whatever, I don't sit there and say women shouldn't be in the military and ever in a situation where they could get bogged down by enemy fire. That's not my position. But those who would, it's not because they believe that they are like inferior in value. In fact, they would say that they are superior in value, that we don't want them around that.
Those people.
They shouldn't have to do that. We should shove all the men into that kind of thing. So I don't understand this idea.
That is this is a weird thing that is cropping up as a far right type thing. Not what you're saying, but what you're characterizing. But not just that, but to the extent of even that Milo Yiannopoulos that's been canceled by everyone was taking. Well, he was saying something.
He went so far as to say we don't want women to vote.
They
we don't
shouldn't be bothered with the dirty business of
politics.
And I'm like, dude, seriously,
right.
Like nobody thinks you're.
But this guy seems to think that even the most. I don't even concede that the most complementarian men
think that women are inferior.
Think that women are inferior.
Yes.
Now are there complementarians who treat women as if they're inferior? Absolutely. You know what? There are egalitarians who also treat women as if they are inferior.
Yes.
There are bad men, religious and not religious, both, who treat women crappy. Fair enough? So I
agree with that.
I don't understand what's inherent about religion. There are some religions, Islam, that do treat women as inferior. I'll grant you that. But I don't think that that's all religions. Okay, so what's the next one? Because I think that that's kind of a caricature and a straw man.
Here's a good question. Is there any biblical basis or support for the notion that women or children should get into the lifeboats first? Where does that intuition come from exactly? I think that intuition comes from the fact that as the generally speaking, physically stronger sort of thing, we generally take on this protector vibe. I realize that can be offensive, and women can definitely be protectors that are better than many male protectors.
There are women who can deadlift more than Braxton can. We get it.
There's probably women in this building that could do. But the point is, I think that sort of natural chivalry to take care of those who are less capable in some circumstances of taking care of themselves is something that could emerge without any particular ideology behind it. Do you agree with that, Bridget?
Yeah.
You didn't hear what I said. All right.
So
I'm glad to see Kevin back.
Yeah. I owe Kevin an apology because
here?
every time I watch the Evansville Watch thing,
what did a woman say? What did a woman say? Men are generally stronger and can help women get in the lifeboats. Yep.
There we go. So Kevin, I am sorry that I was picking on Kentucky too much because an Evansville guy. First there was the two women who tried to rob the store at the mall, and then their car stalled out in the parking lot.
So beautiful.
And I was like, these people have to be from
People
Kentucky.
come running out of our local mall with 3 shopping carts full of stuff, rushing. We're making a jailbreak. We gotta get out of here. Get the getaway car. What's going on with the getaway car?
Yeah. And
it's
second,
sitting out there and it wouldn't start. Like in the movies when
Yeah.
someone tries to get away and they run and jump in the car and they can't get it started, and the police are coming. And you're like, that never happens in reality. That's a trope. No, it happened.
Yeah, it happened here in Evansville. And so Second said in response to my posting, they was like, this must have been those people in Kentucky coming across the river, for that to have happened. It had to be Kentucky.
Oh, yeah,
folks.
it could have been, yeah.
And so I tagged Kevin. I said, Kevin, are these your people? But
don't put that on Southerners. Let's put that on Northerners. That's Evansville people doing that.
Yeah, and I had to owe him an apology because there was a guy that's from Evansville who actually went to Kentucky to do his dirty work, stealing Cadillac converters and selling them in Owensboro.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh man, actually, you're right. It's the Evansville trash that is doing all of this.
Don't say trash.
Yeah.
But S.J. Thomas, and thanks for showing up. She mentioned me because I commented in a video the other day, I think, and thank you. Well, Pritchett,
there's one more thing.
Okay.
Let's just to close it out.
Okay. You gonna close in a word of prayer?
I'm going to close by reading an atheist.
You want to give an altar call?
Let's see what the atheist says.
Where?
Point number 5.
Oh, we did number 5.
No, we did number 4.
We did number 5.
The women are inferior thing.
We did that.
Oh, that was number 5.
That's number 5.
Okay.
We're done. Yay.
What did any of that have to do with it making an atheist better husband, except for maybe arguably the last point, which I don't think is valid?
I tried to find some ways to help him.
To write a better article than the atheist who said, "Here's how I'm a better husband because I am a better husband than religious people."
Well, I felt it was my obligation as a really good husband. I don't know how good of a husband he really is.
Yeah.
And so I thought maybe, this was a cry for help of sorts. I thought I'd help him by telling him some idea how my response.
What I heard is, I'll be a better husband because before I ever commit to being your husband, I'm going to use you as a plaything, and it may or may not work out.
Commitment's pretty important.
Yeah. So that's what I. So I really don't. I don't think that this guy. I don't think it is true that atheists make better. That doesn't mean that all atheists are bad husbands and all Christians are good husbands.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think he made his case that atheists make better husbands than Christians. But nice try.
And so I'll tell you what, I thought that was a pretty fun show.
Any more questions or no?
I think we're pretty well there.
Well, listen, folks, it's been a lot of fun. If you're a Christian husband, be the best husband that you can possibly be. If you are preaching the gospel to lost people, they are going to be needlessly offended anyway, so be as needfully offensive as you possibly can be, as the situation requires. We are now getting super chats, so we will read these on the way out. Always happens.
Derek says, and thank you for all your super chats. Were you guys watching the conversations and discussions? Let me turn the music down just a bit. Between Arminians and Provisionists the last few weeks. Well, I saw the one with everybody that was on Free Thinking Ministries. And in fact, it's funny you say that because Dr. Jonathan Pritchett and I argued aggressively with each other about prevenient grace just before the show, like literally seconds before the show.
Yeah. For some reason, Braxton thinks I believe in it when I don't. But yeah, I watched that. I actually agreed with by the way, Derek, I watched your response to it. And I agreed with everything that you say. If you're not going to affirm an ontological change, then what are y'all talking about? I very much agree with your takeaway from that.
Tim the Ancient says, you guys ever been to Falls of the Ohio in Clarksville? Visited with my father a few months ago. Was really cool. Now, I've been to the Land Between the Lakes, which is down there and ends kind of in Clarksville. But I haven't been to those falls. We'll have to check it out, Bridget. Maybe a family camping trip or something. Nope. Well, folks, this has been great. And the good news is if we wait just another 30 seconds, we can end this to the second on the hour. Do you think we can do it?
I think you're going to do it now that you said it. So, yeah, we're going to do it. You're going to try to click that button right at the 60-minute mark.
Yep. Okay. And we're about 15 seconds away.
15 seconds away.
Stay with us, folks. Let's just see if it happens. This is it. We'll see you next time on Trinity